51. Recovering. Kesas warped Madison back to Selim and stared into space. He was exhausted. But there was so much to do, and so many things to take care of. His minds drifted to his injuries, the pain never having left, particularly for the holes in his head, chest, and belly. He took many hits but luckily none were fatal. And I lost 2 flippers. I got out pretty easy unlike everything in that solar system, the space whale remarked, though for all their worth beyond being aesthetic they didn't serve such an important purpose. Anyway, from the tingling sensation around what's left of them they will regrow. The missing limbs were still an annoyance, an organ, the brain in his head was rapidly healing back up but the simple fact that he felt he became dumber, so to say when it was shredded, it was quite horrifying. Beyond having your head stabbed of course. Now what is going on with my body? He put his full attention on it. He remarked it earlier but it was not the time and what he noticed was strange, to say the least. Some internal parts of his body were in a strange mix of what appeared to be some kind of energy, that early resembled gravity as strange as it sounded. But it was his body, trying to move the energy it stirred and felt like a malleable muscle in between liquid and viscous. This is related to my new pair of eyes. Will it spread as I grow? I suppose I shouldn't really worry. I mean, it's good news, Kesas thought, perplexed and confused. It's in moments like that he would like to have in-depth knowledge of the biology of his species if biology is even the correct term to use here. With efforts he willed dozens of wormholes into existence, one leading to the white dragon on Triton. The wormholes that led to different suns were cut off when he was stabbed in the brain. Putting the connection back he saw the white dragon shift and shiver, she was crying, thinking it must be some sort of nightmare. Starting at her through the wormhole he made Io float. Uranium from the deepest part of Selim was warped, ground to sand, infused with a small amount of life energy, and placed below her in a makeshift bed. On the Earth of another universe, Poyo slapped a tin can otherwise known as Jaeger before he was forcefully warped back home. He barked in indignation but still at the time to take a souvenir in the shape of an arm with a sword. This was followed by every other of Kesas' titans and the flock he left in another part of this same universe. All of this didn't come without cost as he was even more exhausted than before. He wanted to take a nap. And so with that in mind, he took half an hour to teleport himself into the super black of the Milky Way, Sagittarius A, going deeper than he ever did before. Feeling the safe crushing embrace of the black hole he fell truly asleep, the hive mind still working in the background and he could still speak through it as even in this state of slumber a part of his brains will always be awake. In one of the vast blue grassland of Selim. Amazing, Madison said completely fascinated by what she was seeing. 1.5 months passed since her arrival on Selim and everything was so amazing, fascinating, and fabulous in her mind. What she just called amazing was a shadowmane pouncing on a 2-headed white gazelle-like creature and proceeded to violently reap the 2-headed creature's guts out and feast on its bloody inside. The eviscerated creature is still alive and desperately trying to escape. Behind her was an Astradelphus calf named Aelana that was staring at what was ongoing with just as much fascination. Then the ground shook, the telltale of heavy footsteps. Madison looked to her right and saw the blurry shape of what she recognized as an axolotl, but it was blue and with a spiky turtle shell. A metaphorical light bulb lighted above her head. Oh, that's Poyo, right? Isn't his territory on the other side of the planet? The hybrid girl asked the calf next to her. Yes. Nodding, Madison closes her eyes, concentrating as she feels her bare feet leave the ground. Hovering, she swayed a bit before stabilizing herself. Levitating was not easy, but damn was it one of the best feelings ever. Same as the other capacity she got, in no way was she powerful for Kesas, but compared to regular humans she was. But it was against humans and not bullets or nukes and even various chemicals. The shadowmane lifted its head and growled and ran in her direction. Admittedly she panicked, scolding her eyes and waved her hand a bit too hard. This seemingly harmless action resulted in an audible squelch and crack accompanied by a whimper. Tentatively looking through her fingers she gasped and the flesh pancake entered her view. It was still twitching. I'm sorry, she mumbled and flew away. Control was a thing she needed to work on. She could lift the equivalent of a full school bus. Admittedly, all this force on something alive the size of a horse will have less than positive results on the creature. Pooyoyu, Poyo barked, a metal arm in his maw, which he was wildly swinging around. Madison stared at the robotic arm, recalling it was from another universe. Chuckling, she imagined if others were to learn of this. And she was going to reveal it. She asked Kesas in a dream if she could have a phone or something that will let her have access to the human internet, and she got a positive answer. Funnily enough, in dreams, the space whale was palm-sized. Kesas likes being a titan, but it would be a lie to say he would like to be able to change sizes. Alas, changing size was something for the current him nothing but magic. This project was on the strange centaur, Alan, shoulders, and many things needed to be done before it became a possibility without the need of Kesas creating a wormhole that would let the signal traverse from Selim to Earth and vice versa. Madison wanted world peace, not only between humans but titans too. She was aware that it was far from easy, but what was ongoing on the Red Planet was proof it was possible. On the extreme south of Earth, a cold and unforgiving desert of snow and ice, otherwise known as Antarctica, Monarch was building a containment site around none other than the Golden Hydra. Humans were running around working, vehicles digging through the million-year-old ice to where the Titan should be. It's cold as all hell here. Why are we even needed here? It's a building site in the middle of Antarctica. What worse could happen where we could even be remotely useful? A guard asked his colleague, all over his face behind his mask and goggles specifically made to barely survive the less than welcoming temperature. Would you please for the love of God shut the fuck you **crack**. Did you just hear that? The man's tone of voice took a 180 degrees turn, from angry to terror. And frightened he was right to be. Luckily in less than a minute he would not be free of this unpleasant emotion ever again, nor his colleague will have to suffer through the biting cold winds of the Penguin Empire. 52. Calm before the storm. On Selim, Alan perked up as one of the satellites he sent to orbit around Earth sent him interesting data. There was a powerful electromagnetic signal originating from the south pole of the blue planet. What puzzled him for the first 5 seconds was that it corresponded to where the human organization, Monarch, discovered a new Titan. It was even newer for them as he has more important things to do than monitor the hairless apes 24/7. Frankly, he didn't care much for the planet that much either. Moving one of the satellites closer to the area of interest. Zooming in, saw a giant golden-headed hydra destroying and killing everything in sight. He froze. The shape of the beast remembered things he would have preferred to stay buried. Snapping out it, he also read the apparition of another Titan, this one extremely radioactive, so much so that its mere presence killed nearly everything in a 100-meter radius. Alan recognized the creature as Godzilla, and so the Alpha of Earth, or so Kesas told. He didn't really understand why the space whale didn't directly conquer this planet, more directly because if he considered that a bit less than half of humanity fanatically worshipped Kesas, it was pretty much already conquered. Alan also didn't consider the Titans of Earth a real threat, and he was right. None originating from this planet could hope to defeat the space whale. The only weakness he knew, or more precisely hypothesis of, was the senses, which was not far from the truth, hearing in particular, as Kesas greatly depended on it to attack and defend himself. The news that the space whale came back half dead was shocking and frightening because it affirmed the presence of creatures more powerful in this universe. Humans could be dangerous, as every species that has dominated a planet with their brains is. Humans were even more so with their self-destructive tendencies and creativity to do so. They were fascinating little critters in his opinion. He flinched when the middle head of the Golden Hydra, Ichi, snapped in a satellite's erection and shot a highly concentrated beam of electricity at it, essentially deleting the alien satellite from existence. On Earth, in the Monarch base of the Yunnan rainforest in China, Emma Russell stared at a screen that showed data on Titanus Mosura, her eyes empty, and she was clearly showing signs of malnutrition. The last few months were hard to say the least. She remembered all the moments when Hedison acted weird and all those moments that should have been obvious that something was wrong with her daughter. But she put everything on puberty and was too concentrated on the development of Orca to use her time on her daughter. And now the only thing she could do was regret. At least Madison, if that was even Madison, seemed happy. But the thing, Titanus Cetus was terrifying, even more, than she ever thought could be imaginable. She broke down into a blubbering mess half the time she remembered when he talked to her and Mark. If Godzilla and the other titans could be considered as godlike creatures, she could barely comprehend what cosmic horror the space whale should be considered as a literal god. Emma was not privy to information on Venus and Selim/Mars and Mercury. If for example a Titan could destroy a country, Kesas could play with an entire planet as if it was a simple sandbox video game. The worship of this creature was understandable in every aspect, it was destroying every other religion, or if it wasn't warped it was beyond what it originally was. If the whale wasn't a literal god in flesh and blood, she didn't know what was. And this being capable of such a feat spoke of a possible apocalypse on a universal level. The worst was that no one believed the two of them besides Sarazawa, and she could feel it was mostly out of a sentiment of sadness. Emma was going to get a closer look at the Titanus Mosura when she received a call, picked up her phone, and accepted the call. Monster Zero has awakened. She didn't even let the frightened man behind finish before she shut down the call. She couldn't believe it, she didn't want to, but it was real, her mind blank of any thought as she recalled the message made of sand by Kesas. Breathing in and out slowly, she turned her head around, and from behind a reinforced glass window, she could see a giant larva coming out of a giant egg. In other conditions, she would have been mesmerized, but sadly many things stopped it from being the case. One of them is the lack of a daughter and a giant golden hydra killing everyone and everything at the facility in Antarctica. Picking the mallet that contained the most advanced prototype of Orca, she clenched her fist that was holding her phone, and she thought with a deranged smile. She was not the sanest woman before, and even less now. I don't have anything to lose. I'm sorry. In the center of the Milky Way, Kesas slowly awakened as news of Ghidorah waking up on Earth arrived to him. His body in a half-curled position uncurled, stretching, he felt his two cut front flippers showing good signs of growing back up. Mind's getting clearer, he bent gravity and used the black hole he slept in to warp above the moon. That felt incredible, and my body nearly doesn't hurt anymore, but still sleepy, Kesas thought, golden light emitting from his body in more quantities than usual, which he took note of. Filtering every piece of information, he focused on the very last one. And this itty-bitty little piece of news was making his mood drop more and more. His mind immediately goes to him being stabbed, the pain of it, the fear of dying. Clicking in anger, he focused on the task at hand. Every creature on the moon having a long run, flew, and swim away from him. He made a wormhole right above Antarctica. He knew what was going to follow, and the ice continent will need some fixing after that. After all, at first glance it might seem irrelevant, it's an icy desert, but it was far from the truth, and its destruction will alter Earth's biosphere deeply. Yet again something that is minor for him, but he was conscious that it wasn't so much the case for others. Just recalling how he played with the moon not so long ago, and that one moment of inattention could have made the great dying passes for a joke. And this was even worse considering that an entire solar system was destroyed because of him not simply acting from another galaxy but going right in even before scooting the planet. Kesas knew he couldn't have done much to know a creature like this resided here, and that why he should have not have directly warped on the planet. The worst part was he was also aware that a scenario like this might happen, but the probability was so low that it was irrelevant. Though this would not happen again, he will try. Maybe I don't suffer for my action as much as I should, but at least I can try to reduce the damage caused by those consequences of my own actions. 53. Beginning of the storm. Boom! The base exploded, humans cried out in shock, and the entirety of the personnel in the facility died, crushed by thousands upon thousands of tons of ice. From the ice, one giant golden draconic head crowned with twisted horns of the same color exploded out. It was Ichi, the middle head. As he carefully studied his surroundings, a reptilian smirk found its way to his snout. Something was happening on this planet that couldn't make him happier. They could feel on the other side of this planet how the seal that was holding their progenitor was weakening. It's even weaker than before we were. Defeated by the arrogant creature of this rock, Ichi thought, this was good news, and even if the ritual to liberate Void Ghidorah was not ongoing, he would have forced the sapient creature of this planet to do it. It would not have been the first time, and each time the Great Void was freed, albeit temporarily the seal would weaken and now it was at one of its weakest points. The second and right followed, ice fell and people felt despair, electricity crackling around Ni as he did the same as his brother, a smile showing fangs bigger than cars. Sadistic pleasure filled him as he saw the hundred of small and weak pathetic bipedal creatures running away from their glory. Then the third head and left head poked out, San, he curiously looked at the ongoing destruction. Forked tongue hanging he liked it and moved down to a man with his lower half stuck by a metal pillar. Wow! Brother! Can I keep this funny little creature as a pet? San asked. This came as a deep and terrifying hiss to the human in front of him. Ichi simply answered by shoving San aside and eating the upper half of the poor soldier. Ow! San hissed in sadness before his attention shifted to another human stuck below the rubble. Ahhhgg, the human in question, a woman, her mind filled with pain and despair as her entire lower body from her belly button was crushed, but none other than San. Shoo! Or they will hear you. The right head hissed in fury as he perceived in the distance a very familiar shape, with two muscular legs, short stocky arms, and plates of a vibrant electric blue growing out of its back, standing in the far distance where Godzilla stared right at Ni. Godzilla's mind clouded with anger roared and started to run, gaining immense momentum, each step shocking the ice and breaking it apart. The two other heads snapped in the King of Monsters' direction, the three minds of the golden hydra full of untold rage, but buried deep within was fear. Standing on their hind legs at 158 meters, 521 feet, in height, their two tails whipping the air and crackling with electricity, spreading their gargantuan membranous wings wide open, they faced their nemesis. With an insanely powerful flap of their wings, they took off, shockwaves followed, and wind powerful enough to erase entire cities of the map impacted everything below them, killing and destroying everything that was. Class 6 hurricanes filled with turns appeared all around them making the air electric. Taking in speed they rapidly approached the King of Monsters, potent electricity condescended in the throats of each head, and without wasting any more time King Ghidorah shot 3 hyper-condemned beams of plasma at the approaching Godzilla. The 3 beams of pure energy slammed into the Titan's chest, with a grunt of pain and no apparent wound but burn marks. Godzilla continued to charge on, his throat glowing blue indicating an incoming atomic breath. My fucking god, we are fucked, Dr. Eric Stanton mumbled as he saw footage of the 2 Titans engaging in a fight. He was in the new flying headquarters of Monarch and the current situation was an urgency that concerned humanity as a whole. 2 alpha-level Titans fighting for dominance. Next to him was Serizawa trying to call Emma Russell but never getting a callback. Not only she but the entire facility holding Titanus Mosura did not respond either. This was bad, extremely so. Yet somehow Serizawa stayed calm about all of this ongoing chaos, and it was only the start. Kalesitis was the one in possession of Madison, if what her father and mother said was the truth, which as insane as it was seemed to be the case, then humanity will survive. They also searched the teen room and computer and what they found was something that explained many things, most of it about the many breaches in Monarch's data security and that this little girl was in direct connection with the whale religion. On another side of the planet, Emma felt her muted phone through her pocket and fearlessly walked in front of the recently hatched giant caterpillar. Crouching down she opened the mallet that was holding the device known as RCA and without hesitation turned it on. The caterpillar instantly froze as white noise escaped the device, smirking as she changed some of the parameters, amplifying the Titanus cetus frequency. A multitude of sounds started to reverberate in the air, clicks with rapid beats and rhythm constantly changing, high and deep hum echoed in perfect harmony. The plants of the surrounding area seemingly started to grow faster. Emma felt her heart beat faster and faster, the ever-changing alpha call only increasing in amplitude with time. It was alive. To think it was but a pale copy of the original with many pieces of it missing or wrongly translated. Mother. Mother, the larva thought. Mothra in that stage was far from being at her top both physically and mentally. Memories since long forgotten of life, many rebirths before this one. From a time when vertebrae still kept themselves to the seas, rivers, and lakes. The larva's head turned and focused on the device. In one instant deception and a great deal of anger were present in the Queen of Monsters' mind. Mothra's attention shifted to the human, and the fleeting thought of harming the creature passed through her mind. The queen was going to destroy the device but instantly froze and emitted a high-pitched screech when Emma by fear amplified the alpha frequency intensity and added the one from Titanus Gajira. It works! It works! It works, Emma shouted in euphoria. She did it. She did the impossible. She controlled a Titan. This bastardized version of Solitus Alpha Call had another effect. It was no mere sound, and so the still unknown to humanity and powerful energy deep within the hollow earth was shifting. This same type of shifting caused 200 million years ago resulted at the end of the Triassic. Back in Antarctica, the battle between King Ghidorah and Godzilla was reaching its end. One was still recovering from his fight not even 5 years ago and the others who only recently awakened from their deep and forced slumber, and yet. The right head was strangling Godzilla while the left trying to tear through his flesh and the middle one was draining the energy of Godzilla. A whimper escaped the king of monsters when suddenly the entire world for them took on a golden color. 54. Bullying the cause of the storm. Space folded and cracked 10 kilometers above Antarctica, a wormhole of a size never seen before, the golden light escaping from it made visible from hundreds of kilometers, bringing to a stop the month-long night of the ice continent. Thousands of fighter jet-flying manta-like creatures flew out of the wormhole in a never-ending stream, each creating a sonic boom as they entered Earth's atmosphere. This was the flock of Calicitus. They flew never going past 30 meters from one another. They were flying in a predetermined pattern in the shape of a giant net, all in perfect sync. Their purpose was to scout the entirety of Antarctica and more. On a boat barely 200 kilometers from the wormhole were the hundreds of passengers on it. They were here for one simple reason: to hunt a certain type of humans. Each and every one of them was a member of the Celian collective, the religion-worshipping Calicitus, and they were one of the most pious believers. They were one of the many squads deployed in the world to take more drastic measures against whaling. One woman pointed at the sky, in particular the sun-like apparition in the sky where a black swarm was flowing out in a hypnotizing pattern. This made everyone on the boat look up, all instantly spread their arms perpetually apart and started mumbling. The Goto on their head recording everything. A soft but powerful click inaudible to the human's ear emanated from the wormhole. The hurricanes and snow storms that were ongoing suddenly and unnaturally calmed down. The temperatures dropped, and pieces of ice and infrastructure started to float. The fight for dominance between King Ghidorah and Godzilla for the title of Alpha came to a standstill. Both stared right at the hole in the sky. Did I mayhaps interrupt something? 3 voices of an old man, a middle-aged man, and a child rang out. Those were mocking, slightly arrogant, and lashed with a hint of venom. It was directed all in particular at the golden hydra. So it was not out of our imagination. The 3 heads thought in unison. They were too young to have truly participated in the war as long as other members of their species. But they knew enough about those hateful beings that played with gravity, these wormholes, the 3-layered voices. They should be extinct, no space whale should have survived. They took particularly great care for it to be the case, and even then they should have all sacrificed themselves. The only possibility was insane and sent 2 of the heads into a blinding fury only calmed down by San. Their aunt, Munhidora, was a traitor, yet it was one of their greatest assets against the Astrocetus thanks to their unique biology and capacity to control photons and to sacrifice a part of themselves for temporary protection, so when she befriended a pregnant Astrocetus all hell broke loose in both camps. Gravity was interconnected with time and space. Stories long forgotten of Astrocetus doing the forbidden of traveling through time in this universe were not unheard of. None survived by their collective knowledge, but separation led to many things that would never have been done otherwise, and with Munhidora this insane hypothesis might be possible. Who would have thought that one of you weaklings would have survived? The right head snapped at the golden light of the wormhole, light that briefly intensified. The golden hydra's body was then covered in a veil of electricity. Alas, it was not strong enough. The only response the right head got was a feeling of suffocation, which should be impossible. Then his eyes started to leak black tar-like blood. *****. The right head exploded, and the neck became limp and fell to the ground, and the pieces of bones, flesh, brain matter, scales, and tendon were then levitated through the wormhole into Kalasidas's mouth. The middle head and Godzilla were shocked by what just happened, but the left was too preoccupied with staring at the glowing petal. But soon the flesh wiggled and knitted itself back together as the wound closed up and the wound slowly started to regenerate back. My fucking god, someone swore as the video was shown of the right exploding. This was in the control room of the mobile fortress of Monarch, the USS Argo. I do not possess any enmity toward each of you in particular. This was in the past, a past from where I was not, but you see 2/3 of the encounters with your species ended quite badly, and in the death of many. I'm here to avoid as much death as possible and also because I cannot help but instinctively loathe your species. The voices rang out again. Though Kalasidas omitted something, he wanted to let a bit of steam off, but sadly without killing all living beings on this planet it will be impossible. Anger started to overtake the middle head of logical thinking. Finally, the left realized what just happened and a hiss of fright escaped him as he stared at the headless neck and the sky. Show yourself, coward, the middle roared at the sky, the intensity of current coursing through their body and the air intensifying. This spurred the left head to repeat the action of his brother. Yellow arc of lighting emitted from their entire body. Annoying, Kalasidas thought from the safety of the moon. It was an annoying buzzing noise in his ears, but it wouldn't change much. This one was quite weak, but he was wary, but it was satisfying nonetheless to piss off the middle head. Be there, done that, already said that. Didn't end well. Try again, I believe in you, the space whale responded calmly, remembering the fresh memory of warping directly on a planet. How dare you ignore me, the king in alpha of this planet? Godzilla on the sidelines snapped out of his daze. Both of these beings were trespassing on his territory and also blatantly ignoring him. It was an outburst driven by pride and emotions. So you want to fight me, Kalasidas, an alpha of hundreds of planets and moons across this universe and beyond? The space whale answered, not taking the radioactive lizard seriously at all. Godzilla's only attack that could wound him without him going right above the ground was the atomic breath, but it was slow and predictable. The only way Godzilla could hurt him was if he let himself be hurt. The king of monsters realized that he might have bitten more than he could chew but still held a strong front as gravity pressed on him, his bones creaking and some blood started to learn from his nostrils and eyes. Hints of fear seeded in his mind as he recalled how one of the heads of his nemesis shows this symptom before exploding. Nah, just joking. I like you. Unless you continue acting this way nothing will be done to you, Kalasidas said. He could care less about what Godzilla did and he understood why he was acting this way, but he was stronger and a hierarchy must be placed. And the old lizard had a hard time understanding anything without violence and show of power. Back to King Ghidorah, the Titan's right head was still regenerating. With a powerful beat of their wings they took off aiming right at the wormholes, the two maws ready to spew their own highly concentrated beam of plasma. All changed when a wormhole of 40 meters in diameter, which was leading to the deepest part of the Mariana Trench, was opened right in front of the golden hydra left membranous. Maybe directly controlling the gravity of King Ghidorah has become a hassle, but who said he needed to bully them only with this method? 55. Yummy King Ghidorah. Kalasidas from the moon stared with amusement at what he just did. The wormhole leading to the bottom of the Mariana Trench let out a high-pressurized beam of water that slammed into the right membranous wing of King Ghidorah, destabilizing the hydra, but this loss of control was temporary. They stopped their imminent fall. Trying to regain it was impossible as right after another wormhole opened above the right wing, and another diagonally below the left. Ha 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 ha. This is fun, the voices of Kalasidas rang out, the young one particularly standing out with an innocent childlike glee in them and many repeated click sounding almost like a human laugh. King Ghidorah was kept in place, unable to fly. Their body, while mighty and extremely dense and heavy, simply couldn't keep up with the high-pressurized beam of deep-sea water, and their chaotic rhythm of apparition and disapparition. No physical damage was done. It was not Kalasidas's intention. His objective was to affect the mind, and so King Ghidorah was kept grounded by the space whale like they were a petulant child. Godzilla on the side wasn't here to see the defeat of his nemesis. No, the king of monsters couldn't move. He wasn't paralyzed, he simply couldn't move. His massive scaly, and clawed feet unable to touch the ice below. He was levitating, or more precisely was getting evitated not even 15 meters above the ice. A shield was all around him protecting him from stray blasts of water or beams of energy. The elderly need to be protected. Both of the titans were physically kilograms for kilograms stronger than Kesas by not a small amount, and the space whale for all intent and purpose physically beside his baleen being stupidly sharp and the potential tail slap there was nothing more, yet all those physical advantages were utterly useless here. Kesas didn't exactly fight like titans usually do, because he has the means to do so. The most important aspect was winning at the end of the day. How you earn the victory is but a detail. This artificial stalemate continued for half a day until Kesas noticed something strange. The molecules of water in his ears were more agitated. The water. It is rapidly heating. Kesas thought this was odd. The water should be at max 4 degree, and yet here from the wormhole the temperature was rapidly approaching the double digit, and soon the point of ebullition. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, there were multiple dozen active submarine volcanoes, but he made no wormholes close to those areas. He couldn't have made an error like this. Something was going on. At the strangeness of it all, he willed a wormhole to see what was ongoing in the deepest point in the oceans known to the human species. What he saw shocked him. Lava was flowing out in abandon. Wanting to know more, he mapped the area with clicks. There were strong earthquakes as the two tectonic plates, the Pacific Plate and the Indo-Pacific Plate. Normally it was the Pacific that was swallowed by the Indo-Pacific one, the two forming the Mariana Trench. But here it was the inverse. The Pacific Plate was gliding out with speed it shouldn't have. It was as if the two were separating, opening up a passage to a deeper part of the Earth. Observing many places on Earth, he saw the rising volcanic activity, earthquakes, tsunamis, and other catastrophes. He wasn't sure why it was happening. It was sudden, too sudden. Even a majority of volcanoes that didn't erupt for dozens of millennials and more showed signs of awakening. Kesas was sure this little and intense bout of volcanic activity would awaken the various sleeping titans. He only limited the damage on life in general to these catastrophes, be it a human baby, a stray dog, a tree, a pigeon or a spider. All did not vary that much in worth to him. All were life forms. However, he couldn't be everywhere at once and had other things to do at the same time. Oh right, the head I blew up is back. Crazy regenerative properties you have, Kesas said almost absent-mindedly, the young voice being the one standing out yet again. All wormholes that expelled water vanished at the same time. Not even half a second later a small sphere the size of a marble suddenly appeared. Light, space, and time bent around it, and wind instantly picked up. Sucked in by the sphere, ice and debris flew to its event horizon, adding to its mass. San, the left head, stared wide-eyed at the little black hole, not realizing unlike the middle and left head the danger it represented. They took flight almost immediately. The problem was that Kesas didn't want it to happen. And so they stayed rooted on the ground, flapping with all their might, and didn't change any of it. Surely their armor of pure electricity hampered Kesas's control over their gravity to a certain extent. But this one was nothing compared to Desghidorah. They were weak. Incredibly so. How, the right head demanded to Kesas, anger and indignation clear in his voice. The answer he got was his head feeling the pressure of the air all around the right progressively increasing. That's all you've got *** splat***. He didn't finish. The pressure suddenly increased by 100,000 times, and Ni was crushed. That was Kesas' answer. The black hole then slowly and delicately glided to the chest of the space hydra, ignoring their shield. Absolute silence. Then like a thunderclap the two remaining heads roared and hissed in utter agony as the black hole ate at their flesh. This time its mass didn't increase as at the other end was Kesas' stomach. The surplus of air was constantly getting expelled through his blowhole. Godzilla's entire being was focused on the spectacle in front of his eyes. He wasn't the only one. Serizawa and a dozen of other humans with the live footage of the ongoing chaos from a camera having miraculously survived and with a perfect angle. King Ghidorah's chest scales were the first to get shredded, the second was black blood followed by muscles, then the ribcage, and the organs inside, the heart were avoided. While this was happening, the Titans suffering through this tried to run away, despair in their inhuman eyes. Does it hurt? I'm sure it does, the space whale said, the middle-aged voice sticking out. The pain he felt when his head was stabbed and the brain inside shredded apart still echoed in his mind. He is torturing them. He could have killed them all along from the start, Vivienne Graham next to Aizawa said, horrified. This was a sight of madness, a creature suffering the wrath of a god. This. I agree, Aizawa responded. He didn't know what the history between the two was, but he was more amazed by the sheer power of the whale. The way it treated both of the Alpha Titans as nothing more than toys. Then all of a sudden the power of the black hole increased. King Ghidorah was but two necks connected together by a thin piece of flesh. The next instant the black hole vanished and two fewer necks fell heavily on the ground, both of the heads connected to them still alive. But for how long? 56, Kevin. The wind could be heard blowing amidst the devastation caused by the space whale titan. King Ghidorah was but two disembodied heads with each a long neck, their regeneration, and alien biology being the only reason the two heads were fully conscious and aware, their link cut they couldn't communicate telepathically. That was easy, Kalesida's thoughts, amusement filled his being as he saw how the two heads twisted and squirmed uselessly on the broken ice like the worms they were. He didn't delude himself, they were just weak and he would have more problems with a stronger specimen of space hydra as all seemed to be Mgeniri to have an edge against Astrocetus in some ways. Mentally grasping the middle one he willed gravity to compress it and with a last hiss, it was crushed into a cube that could fit in the palm of a human child. San, the left and last remaining head of what was once King Ghidorah, stared in abject horror, a primal terror filled his being as the last of and strongest of his brother was killed, the one he believed superior. Crushed like a bug. Oh. Scarred, aren't you? I know the feeling, will I die? Can the pain stop? Can someone help me? Don't worry, killing and then eating you will bear insignificant benefit to my growth. The voices of Kalesidas resonated across Antarctica, in perfect unison, sending shivers down what little remained of San's spine. What interests me is what you have in your little mind. And if you can earn my trust, one promise to be merciful, the space whale promised. His action and enjoyment of what he did stemmed from his hate for King Ghidorah's species and not any grudge he had against them, or more like him now. Yes. I fully submit it to you. Please don't kill me, San instantly answered, fear past his draconic and hissing yet youngish voice. He didn't even want to fight the Astrocetus above him, to begin with, simply he was overpowered and had no say in the matter. He was the least intelligent of the tree heads, the type with two brain cells fighting to get third place. And mainly the reason why he was the weaker of the three. San froze as he felt himself be unaffected by the planet's gravity, and then he was brought to the golden-bathed wormhole. Arriving on the moon, the head was met with the real Kalesidas for 3 long seconds of pure unaltered terror before another wormhole appeared and he was transported to the deepest part of the abyss to his temporary room. A message was sent from Kalesidas via a wormhole. I hope it doesn't bother you, but your name now is Kevin. Godzilla next to the scene was staring wide-eyed. He understood how outclassed he was, but now it was forever imprinted in his very being. His instincts screamed at him to submit right here right there, but his pride didn't let that happen, but both of the Titans knew that it was already the case. Godzilla snorted and walked away. Godzilla, leaving already? That's your name, right? At least that is what the humans call you. The planet is awakening. I suppose it doesn't bother you if I observe the planet for some time, and then the wormhole closed, leaving behind the flock as they explored the world in the stead of their master. We might have underestimated it. A bit, Dr. Rick Stanton said, the hair all over his body standing on end, even if he was on the other side of the planet. It's not every day you see a black hole and a titan capable of threatening humanity's existence be considered a mere toy by a being that could control gravity. Amazing, Serizawa mumbled in a trance-like state, a childlike glee in his eyes. Next to him, his assistant Vivienne was still trying to comprehend what just happened. So this is the real power creature who held Maddie, Mark Russell thought sadly. He was Monarch's senior anthrozoologist and all his knowledge about the behavior between humans and animals was useless here. This was a god, that animals, or lower intelligence life forms were them in the equation. Sorry to burst your bubble, but I got a call from His Excellency of the United Nation, he isn't happy. As usual. Oh my god, Jen Foster, the pilot of the USS Argo, arrived in the room. Her stern voice trailed off as a video of the black hole and King Ghidorah getting swallowed by it passed on repeat. Jen came back to reality and continued. 1. His Excellency asked Monarch to know what those unidentified flying object creatures were and what should each nation do. Tell all those Paras politician to don't fucking shoot them, that will be a good start. Those creatures are from Titanus Cetus. And you have an idea of what he is capable of with this footage. For what purpose we don't know, but by all gods or whatever divinities, any nation suicidal enough to do this will be raised off the face of Earth and history, that I can promise you. Let's not see how well Earth will fare. Against a black hole, Eric answered, horrified by the possibility of one trigger-happy dumbass killing one of the members of the flock and condemning an entire country. As if I will do that, Kelasidius thought, having fun at the little human's antics. He found them cute, worrying about this, like how an owner will see his pets. The flock was immortal in mind as long he lived, the perfect scooting tools. A human killing one will only earn the humans, or if she was obligated to do it, the one having ordered the command to be brutally killed. Humans were smart creatures and would see a pattern of death relying on the killing of flock's members. I'm truly a monster, or it's just natural. Who knows? Probably the first option. I don't have an excuse and won't try to find one, the space whale remarked matter of fact. He committed genocide on a planetary level, no star system level, as the Yautja were spacefaring and likely colonized their entire stellar system. All because of his recklessness, and even without the xenomorph Ghidorah he would have killed millions if not billions of Yautjas for the mistake of one. It was logical from a certain point of view, but clearly extreme and emotionally driven when there were other less violent possibilities. Kelasidius was growing for the better of himself and the worst of others. 57. Big Moth. The golden light washing over Antarctica progressively receded as the wormhole slowly closed, letting place to the usual darkness of the ice continent. The icy desert was desolated, and the center of Antarctica was destroyed beyond what humanity could hope to do with its current technological advancement. Videos of what was seen in Antarctica from the people in the far distance were already on the internet, with many more videos of the current chaotic states of the world. The Ring of Fire, a long area of great geological activity leading to earthquakes and eruptions, was a death zone for nearly everything but the superorganism known as Titans, whose slumber for a large amount of them was halted by great earthquakes that ravaged the lands. Yet all of it was reduced by the influence of Kelasidius' gravity, greatly reducing the forces in the shift of the Earth. An activity that was taking great amounts of concentration and precision. Many islands had already sunk under the flow of the ocean, villages and cities were ruined by natural catastrophes, and natural areas all over the world suffered just as much. He wasn't omnipresent, but if he didn't intervene, the planet's biosphere would greatly suffer, or more accurately be mostly wiped out. The flock gives real-time feedback through the hive mind, with him sending regular clicks to Earth via wormholes. He was stopping most of the damage, the rest will be Godzilla and humanity's problems. He was already doing too much in his opinion. Why is this happening? The space whale contemplated from the safety of Selim, Mars, and the immediate response was that it was related to him. How the blue planet currently was made him think of when he revived the core of a planet. There was uncontrolled and powerful geological activity, which was normal as it was the objective. A dead planet with no geological activity. The planet he had claimed reacted positively in his presence, which was translated into various geological activities. But it was when he sang, he was a whale after all, but that was something he found himself doing less and less. Oh. So that's it, he concluded as a hypothesis formed in his mind, it was the ORCA. The device was engineered to pacify/control Titans. He didn't claim ownership of Earth, but his mother did, and he knew that the humans had records of his alpha call. She fucked up so badly, he thought, in a mix of amusement with a hint of schadenfreude at the future reaction of Emma's when she will learn what she intentionally did, and irritated as it will make one of his children sad. Using the microchips, he made Allen implants on both of the two most important humans, the biological parents of Madison. Instantly locating the woman, she was flying above as the passenger of a military helicopter above a rich and luxuriant forest in the middle of Yunnan province. Emma Russell was breathing calmly, the ORCA turned off and right next to her. Her expression was hard, opening her eyes she stared right into the eyes of a man she hated but could work with for a better future. This was a criminal, an eco-terrorist, leader of a mercenary squad, and it was Alan Joe. All of a sudden the world seemingly came to a stop, the sound of the wind, the engines, the moving forest down below, and the mercenaries all stopped moving. Emma was the sole aware of this change and didn't have the time to think more. A wormhole formed right in front of her and led to one of the massive golden and vantablack eyeballs of Kesas. She felt as if the great whale could stare right at her very soul, which yes Kesas could, and it was a simple human soul, one not in the best of shape but nothing out of the ordinary. Emma's very being was filled with primal terror, despair, and anguish. Her instincts screamed at her to flee and run, but her muscles didn't respond, paralyzed by fear. And she was a kilometer above the ground, either way. The ORCA, the work of her life, floated in front of her and was folded into a beautiful orca origami. The next instant she was falling through the sky, entering wormhole after wormhole, each showing the current state of the world. People dying, from a dead teenage girl the age of Madison impaled in the gut by a tree to a titan waking up and swatting a helicopter like a mosquito. Blinking she found herself levitating a meter above a metal floor. People she knew, such as Sarazawa, his assistant, and her ex-husband, were all looking at her with wide eyes. Then the hold of Kesas disappeared and she fell, slamming her head against the metal, knocking her unconscious and breaking her nose. Another wormhole frowned and the orca origami made of the ORCA was gently and carefully placed next to Emma. Eco-terrorist. What do I do with all of you? Kesas pondered upon this life-changing question, for the humans, for approximately a third of a nanosecond before deciding he will take their helicopter and parachutes. Unfreezing their body, he let fundamental laws of gravity work as it was intended. His attention shifted as he heard a piercing and melodious cry resonate through the forest. Mothra, the space whale thought, recognizing it. Willing a wormhole at the origin of the cry, he was met with an ethereal lepidoptera, bioluminescent wings spreading wide in all of their magnificent glories. The queen of monsters, Mothra, the oldest and wisest earthborn titan of this planet, is capable of infinitely reincarnating by her power. Mom, he froze as the regal and insectoid feminine voice filled with hope and genuine happiness rang out. Mom, he repeated back, utter coswindle fusion and bafflement in his voice. It was the last he thought of hearing from the queen of monsters, then it clicked as to why she called him that, and understanding now a part of him was sad. On Selim, Madison was with Alan, riding his back like he was a horse. An action the architect for the love of Kesas couldn't even begin to understand, but he let it happen. The girl was brilliant and had taken him as a sort of uncle, another concept he had trouble wrapping his head around. Why did humans have such alien concepts, to begin with? But it's what makes them fascinating, he presumed. Al, in your honest opinion, what type of flavor would Kevin like for his cookies? Madison asked, her eyes sparkling with wonder, on the holographic screen where Kevin could be seen curled in a ball reminiscing her of a species of snakes she particularly liked, ball pythons. Sadly her mom had ophidiophobia and so she never could get her hand on one, or maybe she was too young, or both, who knows. Electricity or some other plasma, I suppose, Alan telepathically answered the hybrid girl, nodding happily as she levitated herself off his back and flew as fast as she could to the 3D food printer. 58, Mothra. Mom, Kesas repeated after Mothra, voices wavering with confusion, minds rapidly searching as to what could lead to such a ridiculous claim from the undying moth. He rapidly got to a very likely hypothesis, one he was unsure how to feel about. Earth was under the reign of his mother, she created life just like him and as such Titan too. Mothra being from what he knew capable of infinitely reincarnating herself with her memories as long as she has laid an egg. If his mother's relationship with her creation was similar to his own, then that made Mothra his sister. And also make any first-generation Titan that would have survived this long his sisters, and brothers, and all of their descendants related to him even if not by blood. He needed confirmation before getting to a hasty if very plausible conclusion. He was already having emotional turmoil at this discovery. Anything related to him was a touchy subject. Kesas was a kid for his species biologically speaking, an orphan at that. His species was highly social, empathetic for one another, and incredibly intelligent didn't help. Emotions were illogical and his computing power didn't change that. He was the equivalent of a wild child to a human, one with enough power to destroy stellar systems. The space whale willed a giant wormhole below the clouds. Mothra surprised him. She took flight and flew right through the wormhole, not even letting him the time to speak again. "Mom," the giant moth once through the wormhole said, voice distressed and hopeful. She looked around with her compound eyes, her majestic wings at her emotional glowing and ethereal blue. The non-battered, wild, and alien nature of the moon was none important as her gaze fell upon the glowing golden light that Kesas naturally emitted, and like a moth drawn to a flame she flew right at him. Before she could advance any further she was stopped in the air. The hold was gentle and stopped any movement. This snapped her back to reality, having realized the intensity and foolishness of her act, and before she could panic Kesas spoke. "No, I'm not, Mom. If I understand who you are referring to then I'm deeply sorry to announce this. Mother passed away eons ago just before giving birth to me. Mom is not with us anymore. I'm sorry to have given you false hope." His voices were deathly calm and grave. The youngest sounding of the three voices nearly got out of sync, wavering on multiple occasions. Freeing Mothra of his grasp he swam downward while the moth, shocked by this revelation, one she dearly didn't want to believe let herself fall, only stopped at the last second before she violently hit the ground by Kesas reducing her momentum to zero. The queen of monsters rose on her 6 legs, her mind clear if shaken. Tucking her wings she gazed with an instinctual reverence at the Astrocetus peacefully floating above. Hundreds of questions floated in her mind and before she could speak the space whale did as he felt she was calm enough. "Let's introduce ourselves first and foremost. My name is Kesas, son of Terracetus as you might have deduced, and the last living Astrocetus in the cosmos." "And you?" he said, body glowing ever so brightly. I forgot my real name many, many lives ago. But humans throughout the ages civilizations called me by many names and thought of me as a deity, a goddess of life and rebirth. You can call me Mothra, Kesas, Mothra said, unsure of how to proceed. This situation was something entirely new and unexpected. And so the following hours flew by as the two spoke of many things, learning about one another, Kesas having the confirmation that indeed they are siblings. Kesas asked about how was their mother, wanting to learn more about this being who gave birth to him, but he was slightly disappointed as Mothra's memories of that time were merely vague feelings and sensations. She needed to think of that and dug deep to get anything significant. A part of him was jealous, envious of her about this aspect, and he honestly communicated to her there was no need to lie. This greatly saddened her, but that truth was always better, even if it hurt. But there was no enmity. There was no reason for such human concepts. They are two prideful beings, one ever rebirthing older than humanity and another that could control one of the 4 fundamentals. Both knew and acknowledged it was beyond her control and as such, it was merely a fact for them. A fact with no true consequence but one that needed to be said. Stupid drama over a misunderstanding was for humans. Mothra asked one question, something that bothered and confused and made Kesas' eyes boggle out nearly comically. "Kesas. Without sounding offensive, Mom, why are you so small?" It was blunt and without context, but after his initial reaction. "Erg. I was put into cryptobiosis by our mother at birth before the last Earth mass extinction event. And woke up around 10 Earth years ago. And I'm not small," he responded with irritation mixed with amusement at the end. He was small compared to an average adult male was 3 times bigger and an average female 2 times bigger. The size also varied depending on the number of eyes and as such power. That must have been hard. "And you are this strong?" Her bioluminescent wings flashing at her surprise, but it explained why her brother's presence and overall feel were peculiar. She could also roughly cause the power of a titan and he was strong, as if not superior to Terracetus. However, it was unrefined, but he was incredibly young, so young that she had difficulty comprehending how that was even possible. Astrocetus were strong, but a calf of this species normally isn't as strong as an adult of this same species. Ghidorah supplement does wonder to me, even if some are more hardy and gimmicky than others to kill, he said, showing his 2 flippers that were slowly growing back. His demeanor told her he didn't want to talk about his injury, and she respected that. Gimmicky, Mothra thought, confused about this word in this context. The discussion continued on, and he informed her of a potential threat in the forms of other Ghidorah, one being the Great Void and the current chaos on Earth thanks to one foolish human. Information that scarred her to her core, the Great Void in particular, and what the human did make her furious. She should have killed the female human and not let it use this strange metal box with shiny light. Oh, I'm curious about one thing. You are the queen of monsters, and Godzilla is the king of monsters. He paused, a dangerous glint in his golden and vantablack eyes. Interesting titles. I do think it a bit derogatory, as you aren't monsters, and not wanting to sound like an ass. Can't even begin to understand what it truly signifies, but that's beside the point. He trailed off before continuing. Does the royalties part of it have any correlation to your actual relationship with one another? I mean a giant glowing Lepidoptera and a giant radioactive squamate. How? Simply how there should be some morphological problem, he asked seemingly innocently, a real question. Huh. Yesn't. It's a secret between me and hubby. Titanus Mosura is back on Earth. Magnificent. So they must be able to speak, which following this meant that she has a degree of sapience and as such probably all other titans. Fascinating and terrifying, Sarazawa said to no one, dark bags under his eyes. It was the middle of the night and he couldn't sleep. Too many things were on his mind, and working himself till exhaustion was a good way to distract himself while being productive. He is a workaholic. His eyelids felt incredibly heavy and he suddenly fell asleep, face planted on the state-of-art keyboard. 59, Baldy on the Moon. 2 months later. How is our new little friend Kevin doing? Telepathically asked Kalesitis to his favorite mad scientist android. Alan, surprised by the sudden intrusion of the space whale's booming voices in his mind, reeled back in shock and stomped on one of the crystalline flowers of the main garden in the inverted city above the abyss. Your Majesty. Yes, specimen Kevin is in perfect physical condition. The specimen's incredible cellular regeneration has let it regenerate all of its spines. By my estimations, if fed enough plasma it should have a fully functional body in 1 to 3 years, Alan said while sending data about the cellular structure, speed of mitosis, and more on the biology of the no-so hydra anymore. However, this was new until now. The space whale wasn't able to engage in telepathic conversation with him. Alan could tell it was rough, unrefined, infantile, but he was sure that the loudness was on purpose, and the amusement from his god at that thought was but a confirmation. And mental, Kalesitis had every memory in the hive mind, as such the ones from Madison as well, but it was from the hybrid girl's point of view. It wasn't the most accurate or unbiased data. Various degrees of depression have been found in its mind, but overall the subject is happy, particularly when in direct contact with Madison. As Your Majesty predicted, a potential attempt at entering specimen Kevin's mind will cause even further loss in memories and mental faculty. Alan spoke matter-of-factly. Ah! How low the mighty have fallen, Kalesitis thought, the image of Kevin acting like a dog seeing his owner after a day of work when Madison was teleported into his room by hundreds of Astrodelphii guards all fully armored flashed in his mind. The telepathic conversion continued with Alan giving updates on each of his ongoing projects. The conversation finally ended with Kalesitis informing Alan about the fact that Earth was hollow and an expedition that might be needed to do. The hollow Earth, it shouldn't be possible by his understanding of the universe and by anyone with at least a 1-digit IQ. Earth lacked an outer core. Instead of molten minerals, there was an entire biosphere protected from the inner core and upper-lower mantle by an alloy similar to the city Io was powering, and the unique way the fundamental force and time worked down there. There was only one explanation for this to be feasible: an Astrocetus. His mother made or modified the planet to be this way. It was incredible. Not in a feat of power, but in control and technique. all detail and minute information needed to be fully understood for it to work. It was stable at all points, letting the planet's inner function work seamlessly. It acted more as a separated universe, and its only connection to the surface was via tunnels connected to wormholes held by nothing but gravity, held this way to be this way, forever unchanging until he was to change it. It was an eye-opener. And the planet core, the moment he let his presence know all catastrophe above, suddenly stopped. Like a kid calming down from a tantrum after having been given candy. And this was how he became Earth's alpha by accident, the core having instantly bonded to him. This means he dethroned Godzilla by accident, not that the old lizard could have ever hoped to do anything if Cetus decided Earth was his. Anyway, many things needed to be taken care of. Mainly the Great Void, the Universe Eater, progenitor of every space hydra, and sealed in another universe. A dimension or universe in this same universe he was in, lost and hidden on purpose. One he didn't know the location of, cut from the hyperspace itself, and from what they could get from Kevin, it was crumbling apart, and something on Earth increased that erosion, some way. It won't happen immediately but in the next 5 to 20 or so years, and that was a terrifying prospect. He wasn't ready, he nearly died to one infinitely weaker. He wasn't ready. The idea of destroying Earth to cut the problem short was there, but it was as a last measure, one he absolutely didn't want to do. And a temporary one at that. He was biologically immortal. He needed to find whoever was responsible for that, which is why he ordered multiple squads of Astrodelphii to learn programming and hacking, each gaining experience from one another and also himself with regular input. He was going to comb every individual, enterprise, government, data center, social media platform, and more. Starting from the one who publicly hated him, so all his attention was on the country that declared war on a literal planet. It should not take more than 2 months for all of humanity down to every individual to be studied. While this was happening, Cetus was looking over methods to grow in power, and control over said power. Since he ate King Ghidorah or most of them. The process that started to convert part of his internal organs into something more energy-like accelerated. It was a strange sensation, not painful, just odd and very alien at first. He was changing, slowly but surely, growing stronger with each passing second. Entering hyperspace, Cetus gazed upon the infinite web that connected infinite universes upon infinite universes, themselves also upon infinite universes. It was a beautiful sight beyond human comprehension. He swam quite far, distance, length, and width didn't work the same way here. So he might have moved 1 meter or the equivalent of 1 billion universes. He was careful, avoiding places where time moves slower than his universe, preferring areas where time was faster. Cetus had an instinctual understanding of this place, it was in their genes, he could tell which way to go, which to avoid, and could always find his way out. Unknown to him it was where the Cetus originated from until they were hunted by the Great Void, and forced to flee and hide from universe to universe until they decided to seal themselves in a newly born universe, at the same time creating their own prison. The same one he was reborn in, but the Great War had destroyed this seal a long time ago. This place was also relaxing to him, in particular, the shape of it all, even if a human would lose his mind at what he was looking at. This seems to be a good universe to train. Time moves faster by a factor of holy fuck. Nearly 1,000, and it seems safe enough, the space whale thought. He needed a place to train, why not use the time dilation of a universe? In front of him was a parallel universe, the most common type of universe here. And it was normal that the universe tends to affect one another and make similar thought processes he couldn't even begin to fathom. Cetus made several other tests to be certain of the safety of the place, to be sure he won't die by some higher dimensional being after he entered it. Because you can't barge into a random universe without expecting some kind of danger, that he learned from experience with the Force Priestess. Why won't they let him, a poor orphaned and defenseless space whale calf, play around a bit? Arriving in the in-between of galaxies, he acclimated himself to the slight difference in the way this universe's gravity operated and willed a wormhole to the moon of this alternate Earth. Calmly swimming out, he saw the beauty of Earth before his gaze fell upon that of a bald man in a slightly damaged yellow and red superhero costume playing with a stone while standing on the moon. Confusion was clearly written on the human face as he started upon the golden whale that just appeared out of thin space. 60. Small whale. The staring contest between the bald man and the space whale's many golden eyes continued for several long and drawn-out seconds before the whale broke it by waving one of its massive flippers in something interpretable by humans as a friendly greeting gesture. Ceolicides evidently knew who Saitama was, maybe not in every detail as the manga didn't exist on the Earth of his universe and he didn't read the manga, only watched the first season. The thing was, sure the man, even if his soul seemed perfectly normal, Saitama could vaporize him out of existence if the bald man, it was his entire gimmick as far as he understood. But if he saw the man as a threat he would have already warped far away in another universe, and at worst he could warp the power of the punches away to the most populated city on this earth. Or directly Saitama away at the edge of the universe, the last part was more uncertain. In the same manner, if he wanted to end humanity Saitama would have been entirely powerless to stop him from doing so, though the bald man didn't need to know that. Saitama waved back and replied, "Hi," but forgot he couldn't speak in space, not like it bothered him. Though he couldn't breathe too, not like it bothered him either. Lucky for him Ceolicides could lip-read all living languages of modern humanity in most universes. One of the eyes of the whale trailed in the far distance, a perfect cube floating aimlessly in the void. The bald man squinted and saw the same cube enter a portal before it disappeared. The whale's eyes widened a bit in what looked like surprise. Reading an alien whale's facial expressions was hard. Okay. Huh. Interesting, Ceolicides thought, just having finished his short mind chit-chat with God. A being that thought of humanity as a worthless plague and that it tarnished the immense beauty of Earth but couldn't do anything because it was extremely limited in how it could interact with the physical world. And as such, God only but in name, one he gave himself pretty arrogant in the whale's opinion. One creature Ceolicides knew of the presence before entering this universe. But the problem with this type of supposedly immensely powerful being was that without the help of a lower being playing as their puppet avatar slave minion could barely kill a random butterfly. It was pretty sad, but they were still extremely dangerous entities, however, and threading with extreme care and the utmost level of paranoia was advised. This God was surprised a being could enter its universe, but it saw an opportunity in that. It could manipulate Ceolicides in helping it enter the physical world, but it failed monumentally in doing so as it tried to coerce him by promises of power for the destruction of planets full of life. Then it exploded in anger and directly tried to mind control the whale. Sadly for it, the mind of someone was where they are the weakest but also the strongest, and trying to mind control a being like Ceolicides was not the best of ideas. Even more when you use only a small part of your being to do so, a small part that was roughly 20 times stronger than Alan. But 20 ants piled on top of each other were still nothing. Ceolicides let God, or more precisely this fragment, enter his main and more powerful mind. At this point he didn't do anything but listen, until he was attacked and in self-defense trapped the fragment in his main mind. A trick Alan taught him, but it was used by his people for silent discussion and not as a weapon. After this Ceolicides annihilated the fragment until it was but a figment of pure esoteric energy without any will or soul, untainted of anything. He absorbed it, he felt the speed with his body's internal change to energy increase slightly, a hitch for a future new pair of eyes, and a slight gain in overall control of his favorite fundamental law. And also gained something, an ability. Nothing powerful in and of itself, it doesn't increase anything, nothing of the like. He used it with trepidation, just like a muscle but mentally and in a blinding show of golden light that could be seen from the broad daylight for Earth. The alien Cyclops, Lord Boros, blinked in confusion but a lust for combat bloomed once, more powerful than ever. He could feel it, something else as joined the fight. The bald head of Saitama only amplified the light with its high albedo. How much something can reflect light, that could cause a mirror to blush in shame. The man in question was also covering his eyes in intense light, his bored gaze gaining interest. This being was powerful, stronger than anything he ever saw, but it seemed friendly. Within this light, Ceolicides' body changed, properly shifting the laws of physics for it to happen as it did so. When the light vanished, no more was the whale as long as most skyscrapers were tall. Instead, he was a creature the size of a small dog. A chibi version of what it was. All of Ceolicides' now slightly bigger eyes, body ratio-wise, looked around with some confusion. The difference in size was extreme, staggering, from a titan to a creature smaller than a human while still possessing the same mass, resilience, and strength as before. He could return to his normal form at any moment. Dozens of small wormholes appeared, each expelling gases to form an Earth-like atmosphere, all held together by the will of the whale over the surrounding gravitational field of the moon. Then the small whale warped within this sphere, 5 away from Saitama, who only blinked and started to breathe again. "Hello human, I'm Kesas, an interdimensional traveler, and I have come in peace." 3 voices in perfect sync resonated through the air, higher pitched than usual. They were the result of molecules being molded by gravity to form sound, in this case speaking a human language, Japanese. "Sorry, but I'm not interested in what you sell." "And why are you so small all of a sudden?" the man replied plainly. The whale chuckled at that. "Well, no, I just absorbed a part of a likely higher dimensional but surely mind-pissed entity that was posing as God. I'm not here for that, but effectively I could theoretically create a product capable to regrow the hair of a 25-year-old hum." Kesas didn't have time to finish as the man moved at the speed of light and grabbed him like a plushie, with enough force to bend the strongest material known to man, and Kesas emitted a squeak of bewilderment as if he was a speaking toy. Staring unblinkingly at one of the small cetacean pair of slightly bulging golden eyeballs, Saitama said with a bone-chilling voice that was also followed by immense despair and distress of a man clutching at his last chance, literally in this case, deal. "But first." The next instant a pouting wail in the hands of Saitama, who has jumped from the moon, nearly all damage being suppressed by Kesas, and he fixed what he didn't suppress, stopping the formation of a giant crater that would have otherwise caused various problems. Zapping through space, Kesas tried to wriggle out of the man's grasp. Only when they broke the atmosphere and arrived on the city-sized half-destroyed spaceship, did he escape the vice-like grip of the bald superhero. "Freedom at long last," he yelled with a pillow and a click that destroyed in a cone shape nearly everything to such the extent of its power. Even half of Lord Boros's body was shredded apart by the shockwave. His soul eye was bulging out of shock then maniacal glee at the new small levitating creature and its immense power. 61. A small whale versus the dominator of the universe. "What are you?" Lord Boros yelled with fervor, blood leaking from a shredweed mouth, the eye on the middle of his face and torso transfixed on the strange small glowing creature that just destroyed half his body. "Oops, he might have talked too loud." "Oh, and me?" the small whale spoke cheerfully, a piece of alien ship twisted in the form of a hand that pointed at himself, a being of power you cannot even begin to fathom. "My name is Kesas. Nice to meet ya." "Arrogant." "I never heard of you," Boros said, not having a clear grasp of his current situation and the irony of his words. "Buddy, you're so outclassed by me it's more sad than funny," the space whale thought with schadenfreude, an expression of amusement on his rostrum that didn't translate quite well for a humanoid being. Oh, certainly physically speaking the Scion-like alien with super regeneration was at the lead by quite a bit. Kicking someone to the moon demanded quite a bit of strength. The problem was that Kesas wasn't a physical fighter, setting him apart from most titans. He fought by playing with one of the 4 fundamental forces of physics as if it was a mere extension of his being. "Hey, little whale, escaped my grasp, and can you two stop ignoring me?" A flat voice resonated as Saitama walked out of the rubble, no wounds or scratches on his body, only his cape was shredded, and some of his costume. Lord Boros' head snapped in the man's direction, and the sole eye of his face widened before narrowing blood vessels all around, in both euphoria and irritation. He jumped, destroying everything from where he was, breaking the sound barrier a dozen times, but just as his punch was going to connect with the human's bored face, 2 wormholes instantly formed before Boros could react, one right where his glowing white fist was, and the other right between his crotch. He can do that, Saitama thought, his mind going to what would have happened if he attacked Kesas. Though it made his heart beat faster in excitement, it meant the whale was going to be fun to fight with in training and he would get his magnificent hair back. Everyone happy. Boom. Boros' eye lost a bit of its luster as his own punch connected with his crotch. Ripple was sent through his flesh as it was tipped apart just as fast as it regenerated, and he was sent flying backward with just as much speed and force he arrived with. Stopping himself in midair with a mannequin human smile, blood falling from it as Lord Boros spoke, "So be it. I will defeat and kill both of you." Instantly Boros' body glowed brighter than ever before and propelled himself at the small whale but was violently stopped by an invisible and unstoppable force. The alien overlord bellowed in rage, trying in vain to get off the gravity hold. As effective as one trying to empty the ocean with a bucket. You have quite the quantity of life force in you, something quite remarkable for your small stature, and I'm feeling slightly peckish. Anyway. Do you get the gravity of the situation you are in? Each of the words said by the voices of the whale caused Boros' confidence to decline further and further the more and more energy he pushed behind each of his moves. Gravity manipulation. Cool, Saitama said to the side, observing the future and imminent death of this alien man. He forgot what the alien overload was called. Lord Boros' gaze suddenly changed as he reached a dreadful conclusion. More and more energy was used as he started to overload and breach his body more and more for one last final and suicidal attack. While this was happening in the heart of the city-sized spaceship, the energy core, a perfect sphere of ethereal purple the size of a city block, was slowly entering a hole in space. The passengers inside panicked and ran around like headless chickens at the sight of the only reactor of the ship being taken away before their very eyes. "We are doomed. We are all going to die." A pink creature with tentacles for arms, 3 green eyes, and the body of a crab yelled in absolute horror. Next to him, another alien was crying about wanting to go home and his mother. All light, every machinery, the ventilation, the anti-gravity motor, all shut down at the time same once the core was too far away from its original place and all broke loose. The metal shook and cracked violently but all of a sudden stopped as it was held still in the air by gravity. Kesas could hold tectonic plates when he was years younger. What is a ship this size in comparison? Back above the spaceship. Of course. You will do that, go thermonuclear in a suicidal attack when you have realized your own ultimate demise. Classic. Sorry but no, Kesas said, voice as bored as a wormhole. With the core of the spaceship exiting it appeared. The world around the core distorted, light bent, air crackled and what looked like a shield formed before another wormhole appeared and it was thrown through it, on its way to the abyss of Sibling to be studied. At the same time, Boros' arms snapped in the inverse direction of their joints. This was followed by his legs, then his abdomen caved inward and blood spurted out in abandon from his mouth. His eye on his chest popped like a balloon and soon his chest followed. All the while the power accumulated by Lord Boros only kept increasing to all of a sudden be crushed and compacted by the transformation of his body into a tiny black hole. The eye on his face was torn off and just as his head was compressed, said I was looking around everywhere in fright desperately trying to regenerate his own body. Boros experienced for the first time the fear of death, of his imminent destruction. He was a being who destroyed entire planets for his own amusement. Him the dominator of the universe, a ridiculous prospect that will have earned the death of anyone who told him that it will have happened. The next instant a barrier formed around the eye, what was left of Boros, and he was sent through a wormhole identically to the core of his spaceship. And the alien overlord will soon discover that his death here would have been infinitely better. Swimming in the air and eating the tiny black hole Kesas which tasted of peppermint and he barely felt a small increase in his strength. The whale looked over where Saitama was and as he already heard the man was far away looking for his way off the ship. As such he repeatedly clicked mapping most of the ship before warping above the bald man who looked up and asked, "Why didn't you kill him?" "Oh, just because he is a very interesting subject, it would have been a waste, and finding a night-identical parallel universe is a chore. You see the supraliminal frequency radiating from the unique energy flowing through dash. Forget what I asked, it seems too complicated and boring. And stop the mad scientist vibe, you're giving me the creep," the man interrupted the whale whose body glowed brighter out of visible irritation enough to cause a human to permanently lose his eyesight before going back to normal. "Well, don't ask if you can't handle the dumbed-down version of the answer with your undeveloped monkey brain," the space whale grumbled, which Saitama ignored. Kesas then said, "And do you want me to form a wormhole leading to the ground or do you prefer to keep punching your way out of the poor ship?" The bald man paused, his brow furrowed in concentration as if trying to remember something very important, then face-palmed, and muttered a yes. Floating slowly above the ground, a girl with curly green hair and only a black robe looked perplexed at the spaceship. Right next to her, space distorted, she furrowed her brow in worry, thinking it was the number 1 S-class hero, Blast, arriving, and if he was here it meant horrible things were going to follow. However, what came out of it was beyond her wildest dream. A bald man followed by a small golden whale-like creature respectively walked and floated out of the wormhole. And they were arguing about who was the best character of a video game. The number 2 S-class hero Left Eye repeatedly twitched, anger rising as she felt stupid, utterly tricked, and probably bamboozled. 62. Space Whale Level Disaster. Tatsumaki stared from the bald man to the small alien whale, the green glow around her body, before she exploded and yelled, "Why are you here? What is that floating you're talking to, and aren't you too weak to be here?" "Shush, child, adults are speaking," Kesas said, his childlike voices resonating far and wide, and a nanosecond later Tatsumaki's voice couldn't be heard by anyone. The whale had muted her by creating controlled miniature wells of gravity in precise areas of her larynx and mouth, disturbing the sound coming out to no more than silent puffs of air. Her mouth closed as her eyes turned to pinprick, cold sweat, trembling hands, and heart hammering within her chest. She realized what this creature just did and, the similarities, it phased right through her psychic barrier, and it felt similar but different than Blast's power. It felt like a part of reality itself was being manipulated. "Huh, that's a nice trick," Saitama muttered. How he wished to be able to simply shut people up sometimes. Never. The green-haired Esper reached a conclusion and started to fight back by trying to crush the monster, which seemed to have no effect. To her shock, she suddenly stopped as rubble all around City A started to float, but without her intervention. From that rubble, grievously wounded, both conscious and unconscious, floated in neat rows. They were of all ages from newborns to elders. Kesas calculated their chance of survival with their souls, as even a mangled, barely breathing body could be saved if it had one. Wormholes appeared and disappeared in quick succession. With each apparition a click was heard, a click which point of origin was right in front of her. Of the 10,070,033 dead inhabitants, I could only find 5,004 survivors. "Only those one can be saved," the alien whale said briskly but with a hint of sadness. Displeasure even. Not because Kesas felt particularly sad about the loss of human life, but would a human feel sad if a random colony of ants was drowned by a flood? Not particularly. The same applied here. What he felt sad about was more on the great loss of life itself, the loss of all future potential for nothing. However, Saitama and Tatsumaki didn't know that. The next scene shocked the two humans as a child not even 5 years of age was brought from a pile of debris right next to them. The little boy was buried below hundreds of tons of concrete, only surviving by sheer luck. But his body. He was barely breathing, eyes unfocused, skin deathly pale, his left leg was gone, his left arm no more than ribbons of flesh, and his chest caved with ribs poking out. It was a miracle he was still alive, and another happened as the child's blood flowed in a way that defied gravity, and medical utensils and products appeared through space. And the child was operated on in a way humans cannot even begin to fathom, a heart from an already dead young man that was perfectly compatible, and the older brother of the child. Wisps of golden light from the whale intercepted it, and it started to beat again. It was warped within the child's chest at the exact same time the child's heart was warped outside. What is happening?" the green-hair Esper said, all arrogance and aggressivity gone as she floated to the ground where the child that 10 seconds ago would have been considered dead took in lungfuls of air and slowly sat looking emptily into the air. His 2 lost limbs were replaced by glowing green metal prosthetics of alien technology that had grown out of 2 green metallic orbs that flew out of portals. Right from Selim to here, prosthetics made by Alan and fully functional on humans as they were tested in labs on humans. If it perfectly works on pedophiles, murderers, and rapists, it should also work on children. This child wasn't a unique case. Thousands of people were operated on in a similar fashion, but with a slight difference depending on each case. She saw a woman with a twisted neck start to breathe again when her head was jerked by an unknown force in the right position. This is tricky to do. Living beings are extremely complex. Changing gold to lead is easy in comparison. And this is why I am doing what I am doing, Kelasidas thought, 4/5 of his 3 minds processing capacity were used on the task at flippers. He was manipulating objects of infinitesimal size and mass, atoms, molecules, and electrons to be precise, forcing them to bind together with nigh-perfect precision to heal wounds. But nothing like lost limbs or organs, heat sutured in the sense that as long as the parts existed in good enough condition he could connect everything back together. It was very rough, it only sewed matter together on an atomic level and nothing near DNA complexity. Doing more was out of the question as he was simply incapable of doing more, for the moment. Mast, Geno, stop and stay silent, Saitama said seriously to the newly arrived cyborg who just arrived and was pointing his cybernetic hand-turned plasma cannon at the glowing monster. This thing. It's saving and healing humans, Geno said, his brain more inorganic than anything, having a hard time processing the sight before him, his mind going over hundreds of possibilities as to why this monster was doing so. This thing has a name, Cyborg Boy, the whale said, warping right above Genos to pat him on the head with his flipper before instantly warping away. The cyborg's orange eyes burned and he punched ere the whale was to only feel something punch the back of his head while he heard the monster's voices say too slow. The phones of humans started to float and take videos and do lives as Kelasidas started his little earth-shattering speech. Well, presentations are long overdue. I pardon you, Genos and green-haired psychically gifted human female, as you didn't know better. We have a bit of a crowd around, be it the human, such as this tall nude man, not that I shame him as I don't wear clothes either. And also hello to the non-humans watching this too, the whale declared with a chuckle at the mention of the non-humans. I'm not a lower life form such as a human if that wasn't obvious, neither a monster by your world standard, but if I were antagonistic you would never know of my existence before the core of this planet falls on its surface like a moon-sized meteor. He Halharihuldi joked, but besides Saitama snorting nobody seemed to appreciate what he just said. I'm Kelasidas, a space whale from another universe, and here on this little ball of dirt floating in space to, let's say, have some fun, but not the killing of innocent kind of fun. If you are unhappy about this development then you can contact me and we can talk that over a nice cup of tea. Kelasidas finished his speech with a deep bow. The city-sized ship in an instant got ripped apart, and each perfectly dismantled piece was teleported to only Kelasidas know where, and this caused the ire of a particular human hero piloting a robot who just arrived and wanted the alien tech. Saitama picked up a rebooting Genos like one would a sack of potato. Warping next to them, Kelasidas willed a wormhole to the bald man's living room, leaving behind a confused, outraged, terrified crowd of the most powerful heroes of the association. 63. Stalkers everywhere. A few days later. Right next to what was once City A but now is no more than a hole where the future and new headquarters of the Hero Association is getting built to be a veritable fortress optimized for heroes and all of their potential needs to do their jobs more effectively. Next to it was a camp full of the people who were healed and saved by Kelasidas, and farther away from was a strange metal box, and within this box was a meeting between 10 of the 17 S-class heroes just about this small, extremely arrogant cetacean-shaped, mysterious creature. Do we have any new information on that fucking whale? Where the actual fuck did it come from? What are its intention and why aren't we hunting it down? And where is our number one? This arrogant shit fucking dared to threaten that it will whip up humanity out. Metal Bat, the rank 15 S-class, a young man with a pompadour yelled out with clear disbelief and anger at the apparent inaction of his colleague. His incessant yelling was suddenly stopped by the rank 2 S-class, Tatsumaki aka Tornado of Terror. One glance and the sound escaping his mouth was kept in a psychic bubble around his head. First, silence. Second, IT is at least on the upper limit of the dragon-level disaster. Maybe even God if it's truthful, you absolutely retarded dim-witted punk. Third, speaking of rank 1, it has powers similar in nature to him, and fourth, it could have killed us all and we wouldn't have even realized it. Tatsumaki lashed out at Metal Bat, and her words more than her actions shocked most of the heroes within the room, the one spoken to in particular. Murmurs and voices more or less loud started to echo in the room, but before anyone did anything or the situation escalated more and more, only a few stayed silent, such as Pig God, a morbidly obese man too preoccupied with munching on a durian fruit. Everyone please calm down, infighting will not help or save anyone. This isn't the time for an internal quarrel. Superalloy Darkshine, a tall extremely muscular dark-skinned completely hairless man spoke loudly. This earned him a glare and various other expressions of displeasure but also of thanks. It had the intended effect. Thank you Rank 11 for calming this petulant child babbling. This, Kesas, has not shown any kind of enmity toward humanity, great disdain but no direct want to harm or destroy. Remember that they saved civilians and healed them, binding their wounds together on an atomic level and used alien contraption that perfectly morphed into the lost body parts of the survivors. The child emperor, a brown-haired 10-year-old boy said, pausing as he took a lick at his strawberry lollipop. These actions are very puzzling. Heroic even, but that wouldn't make sense. Unless they are deceiving us in some way, which is likely the case, but again if rank 2 is accurate then why? Why do this? What are their objectives? It is a unique case never seen before, that concern the fate of millions if not billion. Acting without planning or having more understanding of them and their capability is foolish. I propose we let them be for the moment and obverse. He explained his opinion, earning nods of understanding but some were disgruntled such as Metal Bat. Drive Knight, the rank 9 S-class hero, a one-eyed cyborg stood up. At the same time various screens appeared above the table attracting the attention of everyone as they showed video and picture speaking in a calm and composed mechanical voice. Those are mostly from Demon Cyborg, Genos, as he has passed the last few days close to them. As such most of this footage, pictures, and information are from him. Also the reason he is absent, Drive Knight informed them. Only a few truly cared about where the other cyborg vanished and this information with context confused them even more. As videos and pictures of a small golden whale killing and eating monsters all around Z-City passed, Drive Knight each explained the humans and material damage of each attack, the time, and the exact location. 0 human casualty, only 2 injured due to the crowd panicking, the 2 were healed into full health right after. 86 monsters from wolf level disaster to tiger level and even 1 demon level were taken care of by Kesas. And this is not all. As some of you may know, this new concept on the internet referred to as memes are from Kesas. He said that an image appeared. It was that of the S-class hero Watchdog who at the moment wasn't here, and Metal Bat, the hero always wearing a white dog onesie, was holding the hero Metal Bat by the feet as if he was a weapon. The child emperor chuckled at the ridiculous image and how lifelike it looked while Metal Bat exploded out in anger and stormed out, only stopped by Tatsumaki. The one the meeting was discussing was currently slowly spinning in the air right in the farther area of the deserted part of the Z-City, his body's natural golden bioluminescent light letting a twirling sheet of energy behind as he did so. Cracked concrete behind him had plants slowly grow as the golden light caressed them. The equivalent of an exasperated sigh for an alien space whale escaped Kesas as he reoriented himself backward in a way that told him he didn't care about gravity. What do you want, Mr. Wannabe Roomba? Let me guess, it's to prove how evil I'm and that I must be killed by all means necessary. Because it's frankly sad, you would have more chance killing the ocean by throwing water at it, Kesas said boredly from where he was and clicked in amusement as 2 yellow optics from 10 kilometers widened in shock as not only his voices reached the cyborg but they were crystal clear clarity. A pop was heard and Genos instinctively spun around his hands and shifted into a unique cannon capable of raising an entire city block that aimed right at the golden cetacean who just warped behind him. Floating right in front of the muzzle, Kesas pushed Genos backward as even if he currently was small he still weighed around 50,000 tons. The tension in the air was rising, and Genos' metallic joints on his artificial limbs started to screech and the half-machine half-man growled. The whale saying this fight was pointless sent a pulse of gravity that made the cyborg fly 2 meters above the ground, then Kesas made him spin into the air. All of his modifications aside from the sensory and vitals one were all refusing to work. Yet all of a sudden the spinning motion and hold against the planet's gravity vanished and he fell on his metallic ass right in front of the whale, stunned. I have been patient enough. I think your stalking tendencies on an underage calf are getting overboard, creepy even. Lucky, I don't care, but others not really. The whale seemingly in thought for his next word became silent. But again, it's not me, the S-class hero, who wastes his time not doing his job while people keep on dying, too preoccupied searching for what doesn't exist, and if I'm right, all your little stalking act indirectly cost the lives of 200 humans. If you are looking for some evil overlord or the like, go search elsewhere. Now shoo, go save someone. And after those wise words from the whale, the cyborg floated and was thrown with force into a wormhole. The force was enough that when Genos appeared on the other side, his body, arms and legs spread apart, gored a hole of the same shape as his body troughs a building-sized monster that was happily gorging itself onto the blood of children before continuing for hundreds of meters underground, leaving a hole similar to the one left in the now dead and falling monster. Since I'm on the topic of stalkers, let's cut this straight to the point. What do you want? Celiacitas said to the empty air. Earning no response, he clicked in amusement and decided to use violence. A small pink slug-like creature with one single eye was flung right in front of him. At the same moment, far away in another city, Psycho, a purple-haired woman, widened her eyes in shock before a smile, and a wide smile found its way onto her face. Greeting, Celiacitas, the Esper spoke through her meat puppet, her voice completely unrecognizable and alien to her real one. 64. Fusion. Greetings, Celiacitas. Greetings, voice behind this meat puppet. So I ask again. What would you want from a friendly dimensional hopper? Celiacitas asked. His eyes lazily studied the puppet in all detail. It had no soul to speak of, but he could see the link and where it was directed. He knew with this the one behind was a human woman, an Esper to be precise. She was in one of those giant towers built under the Z-City ghost town, funnily also not far from where he was in Saitama's apartment. He didn't know who she was, but at any point never had it crossed his mind that she was a good person. The entire area was infested with food/monsters. There was more than one of such towers below. It was an entire town of monsters connected through tunnels to other cities. He was curious and greatly amused. On the other side, Psychos felt like she was being observed, which made her slightly nervous and could only be put on the whale, and it could be both bad or good. And she was less than pleased at this fact. She couldn't understand, and that pissed her off. Her mind went over various possible questions, as this wasn't planned, and she held doubt about the whale's origin. He wasn't from Earth, which was certain, or he was just born, as there was no prior information about him. However, his coming from another universe was more likely than not, that the whale simply being delusional than anything else. In all accounts, Celiacitas seemed extremely powerful. How even just him staring at her puppet made her feel uneasy, which should be impossible, and the most important and obvious fact, he wasn't human. I wanted to ask you. What are your thoughts on humanity? She paused her question, and the equivalent of an amused snort was emitted from the whale. Philosophical much? Honestly, if I grossly generalize with their histories from hundreds of universes, I will say despairingly illogical and hilariously suicidal primates with a love for self-destruction and destruction of everything in general, though this isn't unique to them. Sapiens can bring out the worst and best of every species. Otherwise, I found them pretty funny, he responded offhandedly. Oh, and I would prefer we talk face to face. I'm warping in. Not that I need your authorization to do so, he interrupted her. What? As he warped right in front of her real body, and she stayed frozen in place. Psycho stared agape at the whale that was slowly emitting golden particles in the air and was studying the well-furnished room she was in. Her body and mind screamed she was in danger, but she couldn't move, as if the air had become increasingly heavier. She was shocked and furious, but not afraid, as she was certain she could fight back or run. At least that was what she told herself, as she was trying with most of her psychic might to suppress this pressure, until she finally succeeded and stood up, which made Celiacitas internally chuckle, as that was just him who stopped the pressure. Yet she still sent a message to Orochi that things could be very, very bad. Psycho stayed composed, but her demeanor has entirely shifted. However, she didn't attack. Interesting. Is it some kind of monster society? Is that why you stalked me, to see if I wanted to join? He asked as he played with various glass containers full of strange organs that for intent and purpose looked like tumors of stage 4 skin cancer. The ground shook as one of the walls broke apart. The face of a giant humanoid being could be seen, the skin of unnatural blood red filled with irregular cracks, hundreds upon hundreds of serrated teeth in an inhuman mouth, pale yet bright pupilless eyes, the whole adorned by dozens of smooth fleshy horns growing chaotically from the skull. Then it spoke. If you will wail. And will you do so? Or let those inferior beings rule over this world while we must hide? Don't you want to prove how superior we are? Will you join us? Will you join the Monster Association? Will you join me, Orochi the Monster King, or stay here playing as a pet for the amusement of inferior beings such as humans? Will you help us destroy and bring death to the heroes? A deep menacing, and a rumbling voice echoed. There was a short pause as Kesas stared into Orochi's eyes, straight at the Monster King, earning a small frown from the latter. The whale stopped himself from bursting out laughing. It was cute how Orochi thought he was superior, and the classic evil villain was evil wanting to kill the heroes. The funniest part was that Saitama was living right next to them and could have them erase them of existence and nobody would have known about them. Kesas warped in the big expanse behind the 27-meter-tall, 88 feet 6, Orochi. A quick click and all of the dimensions of the Monster Association headquarters were in his brains. A bit tight, but with a bit of effort I will fit just fine, he spoke. His body glowed a burning gold, and as the light vanished his real size was shown. Monsters all around that were too weak and not fast enough to close their eyes became blind by the light, but nobody really cared about such weaklings. The next instant a 340-meter, 11-15 feet 5, long alien whale calmly lit the entire cave with his golden light. He stretched in front of the surprised gaze of Orochi before orienting himself, crushing everything where his body touched until he was facing the Monster King. This is more appropriate to speak between monsters now, yeah. To your very gracious offer, my answer is no. Kesas spoke, his triple-layered voices made from air being manipulated mixed with his real ones, causing more than a few monsters to lose consciousness or die. Then an all-encompassing pressure of his gravity was let free. Monsters either were crushed or slammed into one another or floated faster than bullets to violently stop as their insides liquefied. The pillars cracked, the ceiling broke but floated toward the ground, and the entire area was defying the gravitational hold of the planet. It isn't that I found you sad, but I found you sad. It's just such a ridiculous goal. Does it mean you think of yourself as inferior in the first place? That's how you became a monster here for the most part. Being strongly unhappy, an obsession, being jealous, and most of the like. It's frankly pitifully sad, not the mercy-worthy kind. The more words left the whale the angrier the two leaders of the association got. How dare silence psychos, we only have this. We have yet not made a mistake, but we must stop before it becomes so. She was interrupted by Orochi, whose glare at the giant whale caused the latter to chuckle, enraging the two even further. There was a pending silence only broken by the occasional scream of agony from random monsters. The Monster King's face hardened and one of his horns snapped and like tentacles grabbed the Esper woman, who only shouted in surprise and mild outrage. Bloody red cracked flesh dragged her as she let herself be, and as she disappointed within the head of Orochi a familiar presence made itself known to Kesas. He could see a strand of an inhuman soul wiggle inside the soul of Psychos. Oh, it's God, that. Voices filled with sarcasm. He warped in the stratosphere while the skyscrapers attached to the entirety of the headquarters that until now were underground started to float and move exactly where he was, leaving behind a hole in the ground that was multiple kilometers deep. Also very confused, Saitama came back from shopping, a bag full of food in hand. His left eyebrow twitched as his gaze alternated from his perfectly intact apartment violating the laws of physics to the gaping void that was now the entire city block. On the rapidly ascending area was an almost holy cocoon covering the two leaders of the Monster Association. An arrogant and joyful laugh escapes as a white gigantic feminine left hand busted out. It was followed by the right one as Kesas said to himself with not much worry. Oh, so they fused. Quite the spotless one on the physical aspect it seems. 65, Psychorochi. From the cocoon both pearly white feminine hands burst out in a splendor of ethereal almost divine light. It was followed by the forearms just of the color, the rest of the arms. Then a human head, hair flowing behind a kilometer in length. The laugh it emitted kept on amplifying as the until now blank face was morphing into reality, one similar yet different than the Esper Psycho, her eyes slowly opening as a perfect smile formed over her angelic feature and rectangular glasses of unknown origin formed over the nose. It wasn't over, more came out of this egg. as the long air whipped the air, resulting in powerful winds capable of leveling buildings as the rest of the woman's body followed suit, perfectly proportioned and shaped in every way of the words, naked in everything yet featured beside the mother-of-pearl-like quality of her slightly glowing skin. Stopping at her ankle, her skin contracted deeply with a helmet made of crimson flesh and scale hiding two piercing yellow eyes behind its eyes slit, membranous wings exploded out from the back, and four black arms each with a twisted spear of the same color grotesquely grew out of its lower torso. From the underground skyscraper, they previously were and destroyed pulsing red cancerous veins connected to the lower scaly part that was more akin to the hybridization of a snake and a centipede. Yet, even more, came as between those same vein dozen of draconic heads busted off the forming flesh as they whipped chaotically around. The combined form of Orochi and Psychos continued to grow and grow until they stopped reaching and surpassing 2.5 kilometers in height, 8.202 feet. Dwarfing the titanic whale. Ah! How fabulous are we, no am I not? Reborn in a new perfected form. Such raw power. Now where is our little whale friend? Psycho's voice resonated as she looked around until her eyes locked upon her target. Kesas was calmly floating above them, out of any possible physical reach. He was also staring at them, two of his for each of their pair. Was your little mental meeting with God pleasant? The whale asked, sarcasm oozing at the mention of the apparent divinity of this universe. Outrage could be seen in the little tie from the fused soul to something hidden and locked in another plane of existence, greatly amusing the whale. Quite so, in fact, if a bit of an arrogant creature. Now, as much as I want to play with you and have a pet made out of you, will you please die for me? Psycho spoke with an amiable smile as she lifted her spread-open left hand. She then clutched said hand, a sphere visible to the one gifted in gravitokinesis formed around the whale as all of the gravity within this area view itself be amplified by a few thousand times. Her smile disappeared as if nothing was happening to the whale. Lady, I can sleep into black holes, that little amount of power won't cut it. Arrogant God, maybe, but don't forget he isn't a unique case, we have 3 such cases right here, or 2 depending on your point of view. Or 4 if Saitama can hear or see us from down there, Kesas explained, disappearing from Psycho's sight as he warped right in front of the puzzled giant woman. He spun, the power behind his tail amplified by his control over gravity, then it slapped her, the result being half of her being blown into silvery mist as he immediately warped away from 4 black spears that stabbed where he once was. A cry of fury whipped the air and buildings apart as the head regenerated just as fast as it was slapped away into fine mists. Her expression now was not of amusement but of rage as she glared at the whale. Beams of high energy were shot from each of the draconic heads at the whale, which he either dodged by predicting them or portaled them back to their sender. Scales grew jagged as the fusion of Orochi and Psychos grew further. The presence of God suddenly increased, and black perfectly shaped cubes started to rain down. They were visible, yet it was only what made them noticeable with their unique aura. It was as if they didn't obey the rules of this reality and barely held on to reality by protecting their shadow. How dare you! Insignificant foreign creature to this realm, to my realm. Parasite, abomination. Die! Her distorted voice of pure rage was heard all around the city Z, causing mass panic and hysteria as no normal human could escape out of it just as sane as before they heard it. Gravity all around the ghost city increased exponentially to a point close to a dozen of sun put together. It made stable wormhole formation night impossible, yet it didn't distort light as much as it should, nor go further nor cause as much damage as it should, as Kesas contained it within a set area. All of a sudden, extreme amount of esoteric energies of various natures exploded omnidirectionally from Psycho's chest. No sound was heard as everything went white for an uncountable amount of time. In reality, it was but 10 seconds, for 10 seconds a smaller and more powerful sun was in the sky. The world came back to normal. The only things that could be seen of the floating city were the black cubes floating and the fusioned and panting yet rapidly recuperating body of Psychos and Orochi rooted within the broken crystallized prices of what once was a skyscraper. What is happening here? Ah! I understand. It's him, God. A new voice was heard, a male, and right after this a person-sized portal appeared. From it, a tall human male floated out, a look of extreme concentration as his portal vanished with a loud crack, and the shield he maintained around the entire area and contained the blast vanished as he expelled a sigh of relief from the strain. Oh, a new guest. And isn't that the #1 hero we have here? I was wondering where you were wondering. Good shield, by the way, if a bit infantile, Celiacitus, cheerful voices echoed. Psycho's head snapped in his direction while the human looked in confusion as a veil of gravity, real gravity, vanished and a giant golden whale appeared. I must applaud you, lady or mister, or both. This blast would have vaporized my poor flesh if it hit. Now it was fun playing against another creature capable of wielding gravity while it lasted. The whale spoke again, just as joyfully, but the world all around lost some of its colors as playing time was over. Psychorochi looked mighty delicious.